Today I'm going to discuss my latest rendering carried out on a silicon graphics machine making use of Maya 6.5, this being the Voyager Probe set in a scene with the various other bodies found in our solar system. The image that you see here is actually comprised of two separate images, the first being the background and the second being the probe itself. Both of these components were rendered on my silicon graphics tezro making use of Maya 6.5. The reason why the image is comprised of two separate components is because in the solar system there's only one light source, that being the sun, therefore the planets are only lit from one side. In order to make the probe visible in the image, the probe had to be lit using multiple light sources, hence the two separate components that were used. This rendering was inspired by this previous rendering that I did of the universe in Maya 6.5, which was itself inspired by the image found on the cover of Stephen Hawking's book, The Universe in a Nutshell. So this is how this project began, with a simple rendering of the Sun together with the planets ranging from Mercury to Saturn, rendered with the correct relative diameters, making use of the Sun's diameter as a reference. At some point on RX Network I stated that I would include the Voyager probe in the scene. Little did I know at the time as to how much work that would make for me, but let's face it, the Voyager is an absolute classic. Next, I set out to find various sources of information which would allow me to determine exactly how this probe was constructed, the first of which being a 3D interactive model of the probe found on NASA's website. This source was suggested to me by another member on RX Network, and the rest of the sources that you see here were also used. My model of the Voyager probe was started off by me initially creating the high gain antenna, from there moving on to the bus housing the various electronic components, from there moving on to the truss which supports the various science experiments, and then from there starting off with the imaging science subsystem and completed that in various stages, and once complete I then moved on to the various other subsystems on this side of the probe, starting off with the plasma science subsystem, and from there the cosmic ray subsystem, the low energy charged particle subsystem, finishing off this side of the probe with the shunt radiator. I then moved on to the other side of the probe and started off by creating the plasma wave antennas, from there the radioisotope thermoelectric generators, then finally ended off by creating the magnetometer boom. Next I'm going to show you the process that I went through in order to render this image, and this process will begin and end on my Mac. So I'm going to start up the tezro by going into Serial Tools, connecting, bringing up L1 and then typing in the following: PWR space U in order to power the machine up. So let's start up Maya, shall we? The first scene that I'm going to load is the background scene, just to show you how it works, or what it consists of. Okay, so what it consists of are the planets, which are spheres, and you've also got a plane, a cylinder which is in the form of a disk, as well as a polygon in the scene as well. Okay, so the spheres are the planets. They've got the planets' textures applied to them, and you've got the plane in front of this disk which has the sun's texture applied to it, and it's got transparency set. Behind that, on the polygon, you've got the Milky Way galaxy's texture applied, and this also has self-illumination applied to it. The reason why this disk sits here is to prevent the illuminated stars from showing up through the dark patches in the sun. How I determined this cylinder's diameter is by initially creating a sphere, which was the diameter of the Sun, and I used that diameter to formulate the diameters for all the other planets by working out the ratio of the Sun's diameter to that of the other planets in the solar system to give them the correct diameters. I then deleted that sphere and replaced it with this cylinder. Okay, so if you look at it straight on, you can see the plane which has the Sun's texture applied to it, the cylinder or the disk behind that, and then behind that you've got the polygon being a rectangle that has the Milky Way galaxy's texture applied to it. I'm not going to render this scene now because it takes more than an hour to render, but this just shows you what the background set consists of. I'm now going to load up the probe just to show you that model. This one I will render because it takes a lot shorter to render. The one thing though is that the model takes an awfully long time to load as it's a pretty complex model. Okay, there we go. What I'm going to do before I render the model is quickly show you the system's performance. So I'm just going to articulate the model quickly just to give you an idea of the tezro's performance, and I'd say it's pretty damn good if you consider the complexity of this model. Okay, next I'm going to select the model. This will take a bit of time to do. Okay, and then from there I'm going to group it so it can be manipulated as a single body. Okay, so I'm going to group it. This also takes quite a while. Okay, now that it's green, it's grouped. So I'm just going to articulate it in the set. Okay, it's a little bit more sluggish doing this, but it's still pretty damn impressive performance. Just going to move it around a bit. Okay. So that just gives you some idea as to how the tezro performs manipulating a model such as this one. I'm now going to reload it just to get it into its initial position. Again, this takes quite a while. Okay, there we go. I'm just going to quickly take you through the render settings, or some of them anyway. Okay, this is going to be rendered as a 2K square, so it's 2048 by 2048. The mental array settings are custom, so that I've got them a little bit higher than the standard production quality for this rendering. Okay, I'm going to select this window and then hit render. And for the purposes of demonstration, I'm just going to move this window a little bit just to let you see the system performance on the side. So what you can see is one CPU is currently in use, and this is while it's just busy doing its pre-rendering calculation, so it hasn't started rendering as yet. Now the interesting thing to note is how little memory is being used. And there she starts. Okay, so the interesting thing to note with Mental Ray, the Mental Ray renderer, is that although the machine has 4 CPUs, only 2 of them are in use at any given time. And you'll see that it will swap between the various CPUs in the machine as the rendering continues. Okay, at this point I'll speed the video up just to save some time. Now that the rendering is complete, I'm going to quickly save the file. Okay, I'm going to save image. I'm going to save it on the root directory. Okay, saving it as Voyager. And the image format that I'm going to save it as is a TIFF. And the reason why I'm selecting a TIFF is that on this black background, it renders the background around the image transparent. So if I want to import that into another scene, it actually is very useful because it allows me to import the model as rendered here without the background. So it can be very easily transported into another scene. Okay, so I'm going to save the image. Close this window. Okay, and just before I leave this scene, I'm quickly going to show you the lighting setup. What I've got set up here is I've got two lights set up. These lights just illuminate the rearward side of the probe, or the side of the probe that faces me. And then this area lights over here, which shines down at 45-degree angle onto the probe. This one is the one that casts the shadow. So I've positioned it in a position which will allow it to look as though the light is coming from the sun in the final scene which it's placed in. Okay, so I'm going to close Maya. Okay, now I'm just going to go into my root directory just to show you where these files are. So I'm going to open up Voyager, and there it is. Okay, so that was the image that was just rendered. And then I've also got the solar system in a TIFF format as well. So this is the background image. I've pre-rendered this. Okay, so what I'll do now is I'll move back over to the Mac, where I'll then merge these two images together to form the final product. Now that I've copied the images across from the tezro, I'm quickly going to show you how I compose the final product. So I'm going to go into my folder Solar System. I've got a couple of images that I've copied across and processed already. Okay, I'm going to open this one, duplicate it, and then open up my TIFF of my model, copy that, and paste that into this image. Then move it into the position that I want it in. Okay, and then just to put a Silicon Graphics logo into the scene, open up this image here, copy that, paste that into the scene, set its size correctly, and there you go. There you have it. Okay, so you have a completed image with the background and the probe in the scene as well as a Silicon Graphics logo. Okay, this concludes my video on this subject. I hope you enjoyed the video and thanks very much for watching.